All right, we're live. This is Gava Guy. I'm here with my brother Turtle.
Hey,
Some of you may remember him from our Super Atheist Bros show that we did a few episodes of last year. If you're not familiar with the Super Atheist Bros show, go back and check my video archives, and you'll find it there. I think we had a lot of fun, and I think we put together some pretty good shows. Um, Today, we're here to talk about our experience. Of course, we're brothers, and we have uh, had the same mother. And last week, our mom passed away, and this was really the first death in the family for me since I've become an atheist. I think Turtle, you were maybe an atheist back when our grandfather passed. Is that right?
I was definitely an atheist when our grandfather passed.
Okay.
I can verify that 100%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was as far as being an atheist, that was more difficult than this just because I was on my own. But
Yeah, and probably, I mean, I don't know how far along or how long you had been an atheist at that point, but um, I think you were less plugged into kind of atheist literature and things like that at that point as well, right?
yeah, I mean, and the thing that made that so difficult was that and I've told you this before, but at before Grandpa died, he was in a what's that, a hospice? Is that what it
Yes.
where and he un, unlike our mother who just recently passed away, he died slowly, and he was in that hospice for a while, and I went to see him, and all of the the immediate family knew that I was an atheist, and our grandpa was a pastor when he was younger, and so he took religion very seriously, and I went to his bedside, and that was just really uncomfortable for me because I don't know that he actually said specifically in that moment that he was wanted me to um, come back to the faith or whatever,
Yeah.
be born again. But it was just that kind of thing where like he would hold my hand and say my name, which I will not say here what my name is,
Right.
um, but it was just kind of saying my name, and I mean, it was just this kind of heartbreaking thing, and it put me in a position where I didn't have a good way to deal with it because what do I do? Do I uh, pretend to uh, convert for the sake of my grandfather's dying wishes, even though I still don't believe? I'm not going to do that. And then the other, thing, which is what I did, is I just sat there and continued to not pretend like I believed.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Place. And I kind of remember that. And I remember, there's almost a desperation, like, please, before I go, like, what are you supposed
yeah.
to do with that? I mean,
Uh,
that doesn't mean I believe or, that all of a sudden now things are different and suddenly I understand why, that the Bible makes sense or something all of a sudden. How that doesn't
yeah.
work.
Well, I mean, I think and here I'm playing Christian advocate here, but when you look at it from the perspective of the the Christian, I mean, because they don't they don't view it like as though you actually don't believe. It's more like, well, you really do believe, but you're just acting like you don't.
Right.
Like you really do believe in God and Jesus, but you're just in rebellion, and so maybe this tragic moment will kick you in the butt and get you in gear here. And I mean, and that's the problem. It's awkward, just sitting there with your grandfather in that situation. But then there's also all the pressure from the family, because it's almost like you're being cruel to your grandfather in that
Yeah.
moment. And so like that was not pleasant, but
Well,
yeah.
and you really didn't have any kind of support at all at the time. I was a very firm believer and felt like, oh, I was right along there with everyone else in the family, in hoping, kind of
Yeah, that
hoping
this
and
would
praying that that you would come back to the faith.
that I'd wake up out of my sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, but so anyhow, well, this time around, things were different. It was a different person. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing about when Grandpa, reflecting on his death later on, as I was kind of questioning my faith and things. I remembered back to going to visit him in the hospice, and he was a pastor. He was considered kind of a scholar of the Bible and things, and taught Sunday school classes and things in the church when we were growing up, and um, I always kind of saw him as, and he was held up in the church in general as kind of this pillar of faith and godly man, um, and yet on his deathbed, uh, I remember him, he was clearly uncomfortable and in some pain and things, but there was some fear in what he was experiencing, and that never made any kind of sense to me at all. It was like, if you actually believe that you are crossing over to another side, that where you're not going to have any more pain and things, you should have some excitement and joy, even if you are uncomfortable and experiencing some amount of pain. And that was one of the things that kind of, on reflection later on, um, I won't say it, that was by no means, a critical thing that caused me to lose my faith, but it sure, cast some doubt. Like, well, um, even in this moment, if God was really there and really comforting him, as we were all praying that he would be,
Yeah.
why was there this fear and um, in a couple of moments even like a panic that he was going to go? It
Yeah.
just seemed incongruous to me.
Yeah, even if you don't mind me kind of jumping ahead
No,
to
no.
to our situation now with our mom passing, I mean, I and I think I don't mean to pat us on the back, but I think we laid low and we didn't try and interfere in any kind of religious, um, like put a stop to any kind of religious views or anything that people were trying to use to comfort themselves and whatever. But it's sort of the same thing where I feel like I was questioning as these things were going on. It doesn't really make sense to me the way that people are so torn up. If you really believe that, our mom is just in a different room essentially,
Yeah.
that why is this so gut wrenching? I mean, from the standpoint, I get that, you know, people know that there isn't, they won't see them again in this life, and that fine, that's sad. I guess I could see it in the same way of, if somebody, you know, was moving to another country and, the chances that you were going to see them again were slim, even though they're still alive.
Yeah.
Maybe that you would feel sad about that. So I get that, but it just does seem in this similarly incongruous when you should, in theory, just be mostly happy,
Right.
But I mean, I, I, I have an explanation for why you feel sad, and it's an evolutionary one because you were losing somebody that you grew to depend on, um, be it emotionally or for actual survival. But
Well, and
I
we're social creatures, and there
right,
are certain people with whom we have tight relationships, and there's a history there with family members that's not there with strangers or even friends or acquaintances with whom we work and interact, and I think that certainly there's a tie there, an emotional tie, that, like you
right.
said, it has a evolutionary foundation to it because
Yeah. There's a pretty easy secular understanding for why
right.
you feel sad, but I feel like I don't think that there's a religious one. Like you would think that the that would be a pretty obvious religious inconsistency, but I mean, I wasn't going to bring that up to anybody, but
There it is.
there it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about just kind of our initial reaction and thoughts related to just hearing the news for the first time. Um,
Sure. Let me just kind of because I for those I don't even know how much I brought it up during the Super Atheist Bros, but my relationship with my parents and um, the family to a large extent as a whole had been distant up until this point, with really the exception of you. Um, I a number of years ago just kind of decided that I didn't want to. It was more problematic for me to be involved in the family ongoings. And this was back when you were still a Christian. But I decided to basically just remove myself from that situation and not involve myself in family events or anything like that. So my relationship, in particular with my mother, was uh, not very good. Occasionally, her, because I live in the same region, like they are about a half hour away from my house, but um, occasionally they would uh, drop by, maybe twice a year, and talk a little bit, but that was about it.
bring some
Uh,
trinkets.
yeah, they would on birthdays and usually sometime around the holiday they would come by, but that was about the extent of my relationship with my mom and my dad up until this past weekend. So, but so why don't you go ahead and give your reaction to um, Dad giving you the news?
Yeah. Well, and I'll give just some background too. But my relation with mom and dad had been strained as well. But I've remained in touch with them, and I call them. There was a period of maybe 6 months or so shortly after I came out of the closet to them as an atheist, where, like Turtle, I really kind of felt like, ugh, I don't even want to talk to them because our interactions had been so, um, kind of, there was just a lot of conflict. Mom would she didn't understand. She would try to offer some of the apologetics or kind of evangelism type things that she had learned, and when I would counter with, well, does that make sense, and no, there's an alternative explanation that's better, and here's what it is, and she would get frustrated, and she would get emotional, and even hung up on me at least once or twice on the phone. And I wrote a pretty harsh letter to my parents. My blog was kind of started as a means of expressing all of my thoughts and in relation to why I came out of the closet. And mom was really the only person who kind of tried to take it point by point and break it down, as far as like my first blog post. Um, and then I sent back a rebuttal basically, and um, you know, kind of tore it up, and but I mean, that's where I was, and it took a while to kind of come to a place where we were mutually respectful to some extent, and able to interact, but we just basically left religion and politics both off the table, and um, just didn't touch it. So, um, but I maintained that relationship with mom and dad, and I came to visit. I live uh, something like 14 hours away, so I wasn't able to visit very often. Um, but the relationship was there.
How long ago did you come out of the closet to mom and dad?
Um, I don't remember exactly. I'm gonna say I lost my faith probably in 2010, give or take, and came out probably about a year later, a year or so later.
Okay.
You were the first person outside of my wife that I kind of came out to, um, and my kids, my boys knew, but and then I think our parents were next, um, and then you know our other siblings. We have two sisters, and
Now,
um,
did you come out to our sisters yourself, or was that passed along through mom and dad?
I don't know. I think I came out to them, but I don't know if mom and dad had already
Yeah.
let them know. I think I specifically asked, who it was, just so I would know um, who it was that they had told, and they told our paternal grandfather and our sisters, and I think my dad's siblings, and maybe mom told her brother, but that was the extent to which they kind of spread the news, I guess. But and I with intentionality, then communicated with all of those people, sharing my blog and saying, look, this is where I'm at, and if you have information that you're interested in sharing with me that might change my mind, I'm more than happy to hear it.
Yeah.
So
See, I think that's been a help and advantage for you as opposed to me. I mean, my situation was I was 17 and living with mom and dad when I um, came out of the closet, as it were, and um, I wasn't in any position to defend um, my point of view. Um, so I don't. The only people I actually specifically told were mom and dad at that point in time, and then everybody else found out through them. And I was not about to go and um, start uh, telling people, because that I felt opened me up to then being challenged, which I was not really prepared to deal with at that point in time. And it wasn't for a long time. I just knew I didn't believe this anymore, but I didn't want to be, I didn't want members of my family to come and try and sell me this product I didn't want. So,
sure.
but it put me in a bad situation by not doing that, because then I was constantly never sure who knew and who didn't, and always felt uncomfortable around everyone no matter what. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I think I didn't understand really at the time what it was like for you, and I think I have a better understanding of that now than I ever had before. So, um, but so I guess I'll start into the receiving of the news. I got a phone call. Um, I was off work this day, and so I was just at home, and this was last week. Was it Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday. That's right. Um, and and the phone rang, and I saw that it was Dad, and um, I answered it, and I said, "Hey, Dad, how are you?" And he said, "Not good, unfortunately." And I said, "Oh, what's wrong?" This was kind of an odd thing in the middle of the week and middle of the day to be calling me. So I kind of figured something was up, and I think every one of us, um, we've our grandmother, our maternal grandmother, is something like 97 years old and has had declining. Her health has been in decline, and we all kind of expect to be getting the news eventually and sometime soon that grandma will have either taken a turn for the worse or passed. So he said mom passed away, and he doesn't usually call grandma mom. His our paternal grandmother had passed away several years ago, um, but so I thought either he misspoke or um, or he's calling grandma mom for some reason. And I said, "You mean grandma?" And he said, "No." And he was kind of choking up, and he said, "No, mom, your mom." And I just said, "Wow." And he gave me a kind of a brief account of what had happened. I didn't get the full picture until later.
And
But
just for reference here, our mom was 73, but she
yeah,
was in good health as far as we knew. She, was fairly. I mean, she didn't wasn't a runner or anything, but she was out and about and
yeah,
living her life and didn't have any real restrictions or anything. But yeah, and it was just that sudden. All of a
yeah,
sudden, she's
yeah.
gone.
Very, very unexpected. Uh, and so my conversation with Dad concluded, and I asked if there was anything that I could do, and he said he didn't know of anything, but at the moment he, was still it was all very, very fresh, and he didn't know exactly what the next steps even were. So he said he had other phone calls to make, and so I let him go and told him that I loved him and things, and it took a moment for that to sink in. I went out and into the other part of the house and um, let my wife and two boys know the sad news. And I was a bit misty-eyed, but I think the reality really hadn't sunk in. And I went back to the bedroom and started um, sending a message to my boss, and that's I think was the most kind of bitter uh, crying that I did and over the whole course of everything. I just
Yeah, there is something about because I also had a similar experience where when I was notifying my work, like that was one of the hardest moments. I feel like it's maybe it has something to do with just passing that information on to somebody else. Like
yeah,
maybe that's a part of the brain that gets activated when you do that.
yeah,
But
I think it but I told Elizabeth and the boys,
yeah, that's
my
true.
wife, and um, and it didn't hit me as hard. I don't know. I just maybe writing it out in my case was what kind of triggered that that well of emotion to come forward. But for some reason that made it click.
Yeah. For me, my my situation, as I said, I had not been in communication with my parents, and they would very rarely, but occasionally they would call me and leave a message every once in a while. Um, but at I was at work at the time, and I saw that I had a message, but I can't listen to it at work um, because I can't get a signal to actually call and listen to it. But um, and I unfortunately I ended up having to stay late at work on that particular evening. Normally I'm supposed to get out around 4, but I was so backed up that I ended up being at work until 7, which made it even worse of a situation. Just you know, I'm the easily the closest of the children to our parents in terms of geography, but um, they were, my dad was not able to get a hold of me. And so when I got out of work, I called to listen to the message, and it was just uh, dad saying, uh, uh, I'm at the hospital, call me. And I've obviously didn't know, but there was just something about the way he uh, said it that I never thought it was grandma. I think I was the only sibling who didn't think he was talking about grandma. There's just something about his tone where I knew this was I was about to say more serious. I don't mean to make light of grandma's life, but
No.
something more close to him. Um, and so I didn't know she was gone, but I did suspect that it was something to do with mom. And so I called back his cell phone, and just coincidentally, he had gone. He and our uncle went to go tell our grandmother about the passing of her mom, and our grandma is the mother of our mom, so it was that was going to be rough. But he went to tell, but he had because he was on his phone all day, his phone had gotten low, and so he charged it while he was at home, but then forgot to take it with him when he went to our grandma's. And our our cousin happened to be there, and so when I called, she answered the phone, and she ended up having to give me the news. And it's I didn't start crying or anything like that. It was just I just thanked our cousin for letting me know, and I told her I'd be over at our dad's place uh, as soon as I could to help with whatever I can help with. And I had to drive back to my place. My girlfriend had already gotten the news, but we were going to drive over to my dad's place together. And I was okay. I mean, I was shocked, but I was okay. I didn't cry or anything like that. Um, it's one of those things where I don't I don't know how to explain it, but it just I mean, I guess some people, they say like they're numb, but or that it doesn't sink in, but it's one of those things where I completely comprehend it, but I just didn't have a real emotional reaction to it at the time and for a while. And it wasn't really until we got to our dad's condo, and um, my, like I said, my dad, and then our we had two cousins there, and my my aunt and uncle, and my girlfriend was just, and we were mostly just chatting and trying to basically distract each other. My girlfriend was kind of talking about her job and nothing to do with mom. And I just kind of was sitting there, and then I started to get choked up. You know, I was listening to my girlfriend, and just started to get choked up at that point. And that was really the first time that I felt, kind of the emotion of it. Um,
It's
but
so
it
weird. It's just so weird how it happens. I mean, it just comes in waves, and like you said, I mean, it might be nothing. I've had, a couple other moments where I, got a little choked up, and there was nothing going on, or something unrelated even. But
yeah, yeah. and then later that night, like laying in bed, then it was harder, and I had some memories come back and some other things, and I didn't of all the family, I got along the worst with our mom, and so I wasn't sure exactly how I was gonna feel when she did go, um, and and I think that's a weird and awkward place to be, but it was it was tough, but at the same time there was I don't know, like just because there had been so much tension between mom and I, like there was a little bit of a sense of relief. Um, but yeah, it's just a strange, and like some of the thoughts that I had, like laying in bed, trying to figure out what I felt and how I felt, were just, some of the darker moments from my past, and then and how mom and I interacted in some of those things, and that's kind of when I cried my hardest. But
Yeah, yeah. I if I had things to do over again, that letter that I wrote, um, I was really harsh in that letter, and I would definitely. I mean, it's not like I would be able to change my position on things, but I would have said it in using other words. But that's where I was in that time, and I can't go back and change that. So I know there are things that I regret or whatever, and uh, I know I just have to kind of realize that that's where I was at in that time, and I think you can't really blame yourself for um, choices that you may have made in that time if that's where that's just where you were at, and you made the decisions to the best of your ability and in the
right,
place and emotional state that you were in.
and that's pretty much where I land on things too. Like I've been thinking about, like, if I feel like I should have done things differently, like if I should have um, not pulled myself away from the family, and I mean the biggest reason I pulled myself away from the family as a whole was because I had so much trouble with our mom, that like but I didn't really want to deal with her, but at the same time I didn't want to um, make it all about her. I didn't want to be talking to dad and talking to our siblings, but then not talking to her. And so I felt like it was for the best that I just pull myself away from everything, and not put anybody, in a worse, situation than anybody else. But I was after mom was gone, I was, thinking about, like, if I should have done something different, and maybe I should have, but I don't think I would. If I were to go back, I think I still would handle the situation basically the same. And if mom were alive at this moment, I still wouldn't, because she'd still be who she was, and I'd still be who I am. And I, it's unfortunate, but that's, I feel like, what was the best situation was for me just to remove myself from that situation. So
Sure. Yeah,
I,
and
I
everybody's got to kind of make their own decisions in life, and
right.
I know that you were missed when we had family gatherings, and I know that as we kind of came together in this moment, um, all of us were really glad to to have you there with us. I know that Dad uh, really felt he leaned on you and our sisters as well as they kind of went through the planning process and things and your presence and even leadership through that time of planning for the memorial services and things was greatly appreciated and just your personality as we just kind of related to each other and had conversations and even were able to laugh and joke together some in spite of the tragedy. You you're a great guy, Turtle.
Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, I felt like I had a chance to um, kind of step up in that situation just because of all the family members I feel the most removed from our mom, and so I'm able to kind of think a little bit clearer, I think, just in general because of the situation. Um, but I mean, like putting together, because my girlfriend and I were basically kind of the ones who spearheaded putting together some of the stuff for the service for the like in terms of like putting photographs and picture boards up. I mean, though I had my differences with mom, I always respected her as an individual, and I disagreed with her, but I was never. It wasn't ever like I hated her. I, you know, I I just disagreed with her, and I needed to not put myself in that situation. So I don't. I never resented her. Um, I never, like I said, I never hated her. It was just I needed to pull myself away, but I respect her, um, and I felt like she deserved, as much attention as anybody who's passed, and um, give give her the full, to really send her off as best we could.
So let's talk some about the funeral service itself. We there were um, kind of the memorial was split up into the funeral service on Monday, and then there was an interment service on Tuesday, and we'll kind of take each of those separately, I think. Unless you wanted to, was there anything else that you wanted to say about the just the initial news and kind of our relationship in general with mom?
No, I think that's fine. I think we
Okay.
covered it.
Um, the we had a lot of family members come in from out of town. I was one of the family members that came in from out of town, and it was really good to see a lot of them. The seeing mom laid in the casket, I think was the second time that uh, was really difficult to me. It just it, there was a hesitation even to look at first, for the viewing. Um,
Just real quick, did you ever have a feeling of guilt just because of uh, your atheism? Like, not that you shouldn't be an atheist, but like I don't know that it's a controllable reaction if your mom dies and this was a point of contention, like that you would feel guilty about it. Was that ever a thought that crossed your mind, or not, maybe not even a thought, but just a feeling that arose at all for you?
I don't think it's guilt is the right word. I've felt some. I mean, I don't want to have, or didn't want to have a wall or any kind of separation between myself and mom or dad. Uh, but I mean, it was the reality, and
Yeah.
uh, it was not a choice that I made. It was a conclusion that I arrived at, and there came a time. I mean, I clung to my faith and my religious beliefs really for as long as I possibly could because it was all I knew growing up.
I almost, I guess, I think you're right. Guilt isn't the right word, but I guess for me, it isn't so much about me as it is about knowing that was uh, a I'll use the word my grandmother used, a burden on my mother. And I
So you
don't
heard
think,
Grandma say that, huh?
oh yeah, I think everyone did. But I I don't think guilt is, but I do feel bad that
Yeah,
given that because of my worldview, that was it made my mom's life miserable, and I think that is a large part of why I had to remove myself from the situation, because I knew that was the case.
yeah,
And it's kind of like, there's nothing I can do about this, and I don't want to have to keep facing this every time I see you. But
yeah.
I think that's whether or not that falls under the category of guilt or not, but just
There's a sadness there. I certainly understand that, and I fully recognize that. And uh, I don't know. There's I think there's an amount of pain that's there when you don't pull yourself away, because you know that when you interact, there's that kind of division there. There's some hurt. I think there's hurt the other way too, and I don't know, uh, you know, which is the better situation. For me, I felt uh, that that maintaining the relationship was preferable. Um,
yeah.
but I certainly respect your decision too.
I'm sorry, but where were we before I kind of jumped
Well,
in there?
just I kind of jumped right into kind of the viewing, um,
Okay, yeah, that's right.
and and I would say you and your girlfriend did just an outstanding job with putting together kind of memorial the photographs and the collages of images of mom and things. She was a quilter, and so you guys had a lot of her kind of crafts and quilts displayed very nicely and things. That was excellent. And it kind of went around in a circle and then led to the casket and seeing mom, and that was just that was really really hard. Um, Seeing her laid out there, I I don't have the words to express what it was like. It was just kind of surreal, and I mean, there were a couple of times where I swore I saw her breathing and was expecting her to just open her eyes or something and say I'm okay, or whatever. Uh, I don't know. I think my senses were a bit skewed just for the emotion that I was feeling at that time.
Yeah. that was hard for me as well. I don't think it was as hard for me as it was for you. What was really hard for me was our grandmother's reaction
Yeah,
entering the um, lobby there where our uh, mother was. Our grandma is 97 years old, and as Gavagai said, is probably not too far away from going as well. And it was just absolutely crushing for her to lose her daughter like this, completely unexpected. When our dad and uncle went to tell her, um, I, I don't think she ever was able to really accept it. And I mean, yeah, it, and she had said to, I don't know if she ever said it in my hearing, but I know others had heard her saying that something to the effect of that it should have been her,
yeah.
and it would have been easier if it had been her for her, um, just because it's so heartbreaking to see your child die. Um, but and our mom took care of our grandma a lot. Our grandma is in a nursing home, but our mom would go there and help her with all kinds of things and visit her almost every day, if not every day. But
Certainly
um,
called every day. She was in contact with her no matter what, every single day,
yeah,
like clockwork.
so so that was the most difficult part for me. I mean, even seeing our dad react in certain situations, or when he would get emotional, that was tough. But it was just so heartbreaking for to see our grandma, uh, with a broken heart as she was, and it's you feel bad, but my mind does jump to because basically everyone except for one of our nephews is maybe an agnostic when it comes to religion, but he's not really um, someone who delves too deep into the uh, atheism theism debate. But basically everybody else is very religious, or more or less religious, if not very religious. And I just I do find it hard to understand how they make sense of something like that. Like, if there is a God, why would he, you know, did he just really want my grandma to suffer, and take my mom away just before she's going to pass away? It seems ludicrous, but I'm not about to bring that up to any of my family members because the harshness of the reality is not something I really feel I need to push in their face.
Drive
But
home, right?
right, but yeah, I mean the viewing was difficult, but for me, our grandma was much more difficult. But
So, do you want to move on to the service itself?
yeah, let's move on.
So, so we kind of filed into the service, and the service started, and the pastor gave a kind of an opening deal, and then I don't know. Do you want to say anything about his opening?
No, I mean it was standard.
Yeah.
I mean, and uh, let's make no mistake, our mom was a very religious person. Our dad is extremely religious, and so there was no doubt that there was going to be religion all over this thing. Uh,
No, and we should say Dad kind of gathered everyone on the day before the memorial service to kind of make a few statements and just talk about um, kind of his perspective on things briefly. He made special mention kind of us in his comments, almost I don't know gauging. our I don't even know what it was exactly that he was looking for. I guess permission to
Yeah, I think that's
legitimately. Um, and we had talked the night before, and I don't know, maybe I overstated the case when I responded, but you had said, we kind of expect that it would be religious and didn't have a problem with it, and I said, mom mom was obviously this was important to her, and it's a service, in memorial to her, so that's appropriate, and um, that you and I were on the same page.
we basically gave our blessing
Yeah,
to go ahead and you know be religious. I mean,
Jesus.
it would have been weird if it wasn't religious at all,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
um, so we knew that going in.
So, but so the pastor gave his spiel at the beginning, and the
They
whole
had like a
we're all
hymn.
sad, um, and then I think there was a song or something,
Yeah,
um, and then there were six kind of tributes that were given, um, and the first three were just kind of nice. I don't have the funeral thing with me. I should have maybe brought it, but there was one that one of our other uncles read that was just kind of comments and
from Facebook, people post
remembrances, yeah, from Facebook and emails and things that were just nice.
all of them very short, just
Yeah,
about
one
how nice our mom was and that
line.
kind of thing, and how important she was in people's lives and that kind of thing. So it's all these kind of one sentence things, and he would read where on the map those comments came from. Um,
And they were from all around the country. She had done some traveling in the recent years since they retired, and um, met people from various parts of the country, and um, so she she had friends from all around basically, and they said nice things about mom, and that was nice. There was a close friend of the family, who wrote a more lengthy letter just about how, some of her times and memories with spending time with mom and with our family, and that was nice too. That was read by her brother, and they were both, adult contemporaries with our parents, so pretty much seniors now. Um, what else? There was at least one other one, and then, oh, our cousins
yeah, our cousins.
gave a nice message, or tribute to mom, and just talked about their memories and things. Our cousins are great, by the way, and they're all pretty devout Christians, um, but much more kind of liberal, I would say, both politically and theologically, and they were also just really outstandingly supportive and helpful in this time too. And I hope um, that in the future, we can reciprocate there too, and uh, be there when and if they have any kind of trouble. That was much appreciated. Um, I think yours was next, wasn't it?
No, our uncles was our other uncles. I was second to last.
Oh, were you? Okay. What what was his? I forget.
His was just because our uncle, who was the uh, brother to our mom,
Oh, okay.
was he basically just talked about our mom and how much faith was important, and for the most part, uh, what I would say is fine and appropriate things given the occasion. But one thing that he said uh, really kind of, and I let it just whatever kind of slide in my head, but uh, I feel like it's a rude thing to say given the situation. But he says something to the effect of, um, one thing I know for sure, uh, and we're avoiding names here, but your mom would, and he wasn't directly saying this to us, but he said her name, uh, would want is for everyone in this room to be there with her in heaven. And to me, it was a very clear. Um, it seems like if you're a Christian, I'm sure that seems like a benign, like of course, kind of thing. But given the fact that um, our uncle knows that uh, both you and I are atheists, um, and I'm sure if our mom had actually been alive, she would have wholeheartedly approved of him saying that. But it just seemed like a tacky way of trying to um, tug at our heartstrings to convert back to the faith, as it were. And I did not appreciate that. But
Right. Yeah, and in that moment, it's almost like manipulative. It's like,
absolutely,
don't don't you think that you know you've hurt your mom enough by and isn't it time now to make her happy? Like,
yeah,
and even if we wanted to, um, it's not like, well, okay, now I believe it's all true.
right.
Well, the mom passed away, and that's sad. But that doesn't mean that I think that the Bible makes sense now.
Right. And that's what's so frustrating to me is that what you just said is true, but from his perspective, that isn't how he sees things.
Right.
He again sees that, oh, we're in some sort of rebellion, and um, it's just a matter of us having hard hearts,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And that's why I find it so frustrating to even begin to have a conversation with somebody who starts the conversation with that perspective. But
Yeah. One thing that my wife talked to me and or mentioned, and I think she's right on this count, but that doesn't make it um, seem less awkward and manipulative to us. But it is. I think it does put it into a bit of perspective. Just the fact that even if we weren't there, he probably would have given the same kind of speech, even if to their knowledge every single person in that service was a believer. He
mhm.
probably would have given the same thing. So I think it seems like it's directed, at us because of the situation more so than it really is.
Sort of. It's hard to say, but
Yeah.
um, that's giving him the benefit of the doubt. But
Yeah.
but uh, but other than that, I mean, and and it was laced with religion. Don't get us wrong, but for the most part, that's fine as far as I'm concerned, given the circumstance. It's just when you're using the circumstances to push your own agenda, that's when I get bothered.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of turned uh, from the focus being on mom and uh, her life and her memory to the religion, and that to me seems like just not appropriate for the circumstance. Even if mom might have wanted it that way herself, I don't know.
Right. Right. I mean, I think it's hard to. I think if you're talking amongst people who don't believe in an afterlife, I think you can have a much more reasonable conversation. But to me, a funeral is not really about the person who's in the casket. It's about the people who are standing around the casket.
Yeah.
And you don't want to disrespect the person in the casket, but you need to focus on the people who aren't there and what this person meant to them
Yeah.
rather than just, I mean, they're not there. I mean,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Um. So was yours was after that then after that
Yes.
uncle spoke, and I don't know. I don't know what you want to say about this, but I will just say that your tribute to Mom was, in my opinion, and I think in probably anybody who was there's opinion, by far the most personal and the best tribute. Um, I think it was you you relayed an experience that nobody else was aware of, um, and really just expressed what Mom meant to you in a very personal way. And I know that it meant a lot to me. My son was with me, and it made an impact on him. And in fact, he on the way to school this morning, my wife was telling me that he was telling her about that moment, and it really uh, it was very meaningful to him as well. And I want to thank you for your courage. I was not able to gather my thoughts and in a way that I would have been able to share at that time. I think I would have had the emotional wherewithal to stand up and give a tribute, but I just didn't have the time, or I was not even able to compile thoughts in a way that would have made sense. I think at the time, you did
I
outstanding.
well, thank you. Um, I did feel like I was in probably the best position out of any of the immediate family to make an impact, just because I had been removed from the family for so long and had such a troubled relationship with their mom that I felt like taking that step and saying something positive about our mom would go a long way and help other people feel better about the situation, as much as somebody can feel better about that situation. But I did, and I also wanted to have a completely secular tribute being given to Mom. I wasn't sure if you were going to be able to do one, so I just kind of took it upon myself to go ahead and write something. And like you said, it was basically um, and I won't give the whole story, but I basically just talked about a experience I had where I was in college, and I was having trouble with one of my courses, and it was really becoming taxing on me emotionally and mentally, and eh, I wasn't going to be able to pass the course, and I was afraid of how our parents would react, and just the um, acceptance that our mom had for me when I broke the news to her, and how she um, basically uh, told me exactly what I needed in that moment, and that's what the gist of the story was. But after the story, um, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we feel sad about our mom passing, and so I talked about the reason we feel sad is because of the positive things she did in our lives that basically now we don't have those anymore, but she meant so much to everyone who was at the funeral because of what she did and how she helped us all. And um, I said essentially that I feel lucky to feel sad. I'm grateful for the sorrow that I have in my life at this moment, because I know that's a reflection of what she did in her life for me and everybody else that I care about. And I just kind of wanted to have something completely secular that I felt also might be able to help people kind of cope with their grief.
It did.
So
It was fantastic. I think if I'd had the time to write something out, one, I don't think it would have been as good and as kind of what's the word, impartial as yours was. So I don't think Dad would have approved it and whatever. But
I made sure Dad read mine before.
yeah,
I there was one line that I thought he might not care for, and that's I said that when I was leading into the part about sadness, I said that I knew someday Mom would die, but I wasn't quite sure how I would feel about that. I felt like that line was kind of um, it was a tough line for for people to hear somebody say about their own mother, but
yeah. Well, it's
um,
honest though, and that's where you were.
yeah, well, that is, and that's why I wanted to say it. But I want to make sure Dad was okay with me saying it.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
I,
even though I had a closer relationship with Mom than you did, I think I had a lot of the same feelings. You know, I wouldn't have ever said that I wanted Mom to pass by any means,
right.
but at the same time, there's almost uh,
There's no more.
some degree of peace just knowing
Yeah.
um, that she's not going to argue with me anymore, and
There's not that
that
tension
tension.
anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Uh,
but yeah, so I made sure to clear that with Dad before I did that. But I kind of felt like everything else would be okay, and I just kind of kept it positive about Mom. Even though I didn't have a great relationship with her, I knew I could easily come up with that and a bunch of other stories about Mom making a positive impact in my life. And
sure.
all you have to do is come up with one, um, and people appreciate that. When it's somebody that they care about. So
Yeah. Yeah, my I think my tribute would have probably been about maybe Mom's unintended influence on me, and I know that I came home from school in the afternoons when I was in high school a lot of times, kind of grappling with my own faith questions and things. Still very much a devout believer, but trying to trying to figure out how what I was learning in school about evolution, about history, all of these different things. How did that map into my worldview? And mom was a reader. She was an avid reader,
in fact,
and read.
that's what she was doing when she passed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not surprising because she loved it. Um, but uh, she had me kind of convinced that there were answers out there, and that if I just read enough Christian apologetics, if I searched and prayed and sought after uh, God and things, that I, all truth was God's truth, and that was the motto of the school that I later attended after high school, and I firmly believed that ultimately, if you reasoned properly, that reason would lead you to belief in God, and that if you were honest and open and searched, um, you would you would find these things, and I just I fully believed that. Um, it was that sincere search that ultimately uh, led me away from the faith. Um, that's not what Mom intended, and it made her sad. But I am very grateful to Mom for for kind of pushing me in that direction,
Yeah.
and I think I'm better off for it. So and that's certainly not something Dad would have approved of.
No, I mean it. Yeah, that was kind of not those specific words, but that kind of mindset is. kind of where I was initially when I was originally thinking about like a tribute, but it's just one of those things where it's like I knew I wouldn't I wouldn't even want to stand up there and say that kind of a thing just because
It would be
I
offensive to the vast majority of the people that were there.
it would be and I also didn't want to say something that if mom was there that she wouldn't want to hear. You
No,
know,
yeah, that's true.
I wanted to be something that I felt was true and also that if mom was there would make her feel better, you know.
Right.
But so yeah, so then after my tribute, then our sister read a tribute from our father, and I didn't have any. I mean, it was nice that he did that, but I didn't have any real strong. Part of it was just that I was not really focused because of the nervousness I had about my going up and giving a tribute. I didn't really focus too strong in on anybody else's tribute, but um, did
Dad's
you have
letter
any?
was his letter was nice, and I think, you know, our sister who read it, she's the oldest of us siblings. She I think all of it was okay for her. She said she had the hardest time just reading the last line. Just that in their travels and things that they've done over the years, he was reflecting that they had so many more places to go, um, and that was just that kind of grabbed her, and it does me too. And that, Dad wasn't ready for Mom to go,
No, not at all.
so. Um, do you want to talk about the interment service,
That's what
or
is that?
still the pastor's? I guess his
Yeah,
final message at the
I
end of
want to
the
talk. I do want to
funeral.
talk about him. um, yeah, so the and then the pastor after the I think there was another song after the tributes, and then the pastor gave his kind of his little sermon, which 95% of it was again religious, which is to be expected, but fine. But then he too got into well, and here's what kind of chaps my ass. Um, is he twice specifically referred to me um, in his by name in his sermon. I'm blanking on what the second one was, but the first time um, he actually used a quote from my tribute, which is okay, but then later in his thing, he got into kind of this proselytizing thing where he, similar to our uncle, got into like talking about like joining our mom in heaven, and I don't those weren't his words exactly, but he was clearly like and like I said, he referred to me by name twice in his message, and then at later points like was talking about how happy it would be our mother would be if everyone was there or something to that effect, and like I was mad at that point
Yeah, well,
when
then
it
one of the times I know was that he'd said that, just like, Mom comforted you by saying it's okay, that's
mhm,
what Jesus does.
yeah
Um, and so he was, I don't know, yeah, that
yeah
was.
taking our mom's words, which I had used to as kind of um, the big finale of my story, and then putting them making Jesus into our mom, or so it's kind of like that was irritating, but yeah, I was mad just because again, and I said this to you after the service. I just felt like he was. taking our mom's funeral and then using it to sell us a car we didn't want. Like, oh, you're sad? Well, you know what would make you feel so much better is if you just bought this car. Oh, and your mom, she would have loved it if you had this car. You really ought to buy this car.
Yeah.
Make your mother happy and proud. Buy this car.
Yeah. Like the sleaziest salesman.
Yeah, and I know he doesn't see it that way.
No.
He's doing what he thinks is right, and that's part of the frustration. But
It's an eternal car.
yeah, so that I felt a little bit better afterwards because the pastor during the tributes was sitting in the front row and it was sitting right in front of where I and my girlfriend were sitting, and I apparently made him cry during my tribute. So I made him cry and he made me mad. So I guess we're even. But
Yeah. So, well, the service, I think at that point there was another song, and then it pretty much wrapped up.
yeah, there was a lot of singing.
Yeah. Um, so the next day we had the interment service, um, and uh, there again, I think the by far the hardest part of that one was Grandma's reaction,
Yeah.
just getting out of the car and then seeing the casket. You and I were both pallbearers and carried the casket to the grave.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and understandably, it's our grandma just couldn't let go. And that was really tough.
Yeah.
Um, the the service, or I don't know if you technically call it a service or whatever, but what the pastor says in that wasn't nearly as bad as it was the day before. But I did feel, I for a split second I thought he was going to have a nice little secular moment in his um, little speech there, um, and then it just quickly turned into a religious thing. But he was talking about, he was making like an analogy, and like as though our mother was in a concourse in an airport, and she's walking away and she's waving at us, and then at some point we can no longer see us. But then he said, but at the same time in that same concourse there's people hugging, and there's new people coming. And I thought his point was going to be that though we are losing someone today, we do have, there's new people. I thought his point was, oh, there's
Circle of
children.
life kind of thing.
Yeah, a circle of life kind of a thing. But no, he was then suddenly, that was heaven, and the people being greeted were in heaven, apparently. So no, it wasn't a nice secular thing that everybody, regardless of their religion, could enjoy and appreciate. It was about religion and God and this specific vision of the world. But other than that, I didn't have any issues with it.
No.
But then he did, after that, and we were all kind of standing out by our cars and getting ready to go. He did come up to me, and he gave me his business card and told me I could call him anytime if I needed to talk about grief or whatever else. So I got that going for me. And I'm pretty sure I am the only one who received his business card. So
Yeah, I didn't get one. Maybe he figured the other pastors where I live could give me their card or something.
maybe. But yeah, that was that was about all of my thoughts on the services. But
Yeah. Um, you want to talk about the dropped comment after after we got back to the
oh yeah,
condo with the family?
I I don't know how related it is to this, but after the burial, we went back to our dad's condo, and all the immediate family was there, our sisters and their um, children. That was some of them had actually the burial was the day after the funeral, so some people weren't able to stay for that extra day. But pretty much everybody was still there, and our mother's brother, our uncle, came over, and it was just so bizarre because he just out of nowhere basically makes the well I forget, do you remember exactly what it was? He said
I was trying to
something,
remember.
and then it led into where he said like something about circular reasoning.
Oh, I know what it was.
What was it?
We were talking about people holding out long notes singing,
Uh-huh.
and then it
Oh,
got into
circular breathing.
circular
That's
breathing like with an instrument.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then he said, I don't know how to do circular breathing, but I know, or I do a lot of circular reasoning.
Yeah.
And
Which was fine just because it's like it was a joke about himself at that moment.
yeah, but then he links it.
But then
He says, well, you know what circular reasoning, evolution, like they
no,
take.
no, not evolution. It was evolution.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So evolution, and he said how they take they know the age of the rocks because of the fossils, and they know the age of the fossils by the rocks. Circular.
Which neither of us commented. No, nobody said anything at that point. Like we were all kind of just in this living room. Some of us were in the kitchen, which is adjacent to the living room, but nobody nobody made comment on that.
I did a
Uh,
face palm.
yeah, I just kind of looked away awkwardly.
Yeah.
Um, and here's the thing. Our brother-in-law, our sister's husband, was there, and he's a pastor. And after our uncle left, and it didn't lead to anything beyond that, probably because nobody said anything. But
No, and nobody wants to get into an argument at that moment.
yeah,
But why bring up a contentious subject?
yeah.
But
But after he left, we were sitting around, just basically the siblings and our father, and then also um, our brother-in-law, and we mentioned, because I don't think our dad was there when our uncle said that, but we mentioned to him that he had said something, but that we were good and we didn't take the bait. And it was funny because, and I don't really know his views, but our brother-in-law all laughed and he said something to the effect, "Yeah, and I didn't say anything either," because like apparently he was um, not
he
offended,
believes in
but
evolution. He
yeah,
studied biology and almost uh, finished a degree, like an undergrad degree, his bachelor's in biology. So, and he was at a secular school, so it was for sure. But even I was I made the comment. All of our cousins went to Wheaton in Illinois, and that's a Christian school, but I'm very sure that evolution is taught in their biology courses. I went to a very conservative evangelical Christian college, and evolution was taught in their biology courses. And I know because I remember uh, a lot of the students who had been raised in very conservative Christian churches where creationism was advanced. They were appalled and dismayed to find out that, oh, evolution is real, and when you get to college you have to face the fact, even if you're at a Christian school. So unless you go to like Bob Jones University that wants to deny reality, uh,
is that the full name of Bob Jones University? Bob
uh,
Jones University that wants to deny reality.
yeah, I think that's what it's called. Uh, but but so anyhow, our brother-in-law was saying, yeah, he kind of wanted to speak up too, but didn't. So
Yeah, which I thought was funny. But and I will say, as I mentioned this to you before we went live, but as much problems as some of our family members have given us, our our brother-in-law, like I was nervous about him from the beginning when I came out as an atheist, that he was going to because he's a pastor, like that he would feel obligated, or the need to kind of come after me, but he never has. And he, more so than probably any of our family members, I would say, is the best at just being a human being around us, and not, or at least I'll speak for myself, around me. And he doesn't talk about, even though he's a pastor and that's his job, doesn't come up to me and talk about, oh, this happened at church or whatever. If something is, you know related to what we're talking about, that happens to happen at church, he might mention or whatever, but he doesn't ever talk about God. He never talks about praying for me or anything like that. He just talks to me about things, about sports, or he's taken up uh, what is that? What is that called? I'm blanking on it. Whatever. He's taken up one of those, a sport that I can't think of the name of it. But he was, talking to me about that, um, and
oh,
it's just
curling, right?
curling. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I completely blanked on it. But I appreciate that he's never felt the need to um, proselytize, and it is possible for somebody, even a pastor, to just coexist with an atheist or somebody that doesn't believe what they believe. So I do appreciate him, and his willingness to let people live.
Yeah. Yeah. Our sister, his wife, I think has also been not pushy, in my experience, at any rate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say the difference is, I feel like, um, where she would not be hesitant to just throw in something like about God in the middle of a sentence, or about prayer or whatever, whereas I feel like he would specifically not do that,
Maybe.
unless it was unavoidable in the context of that conversation. But um,
I was just thinking about it, and earlier when I said that, I came out to you first and then to mom and dad, I recalled actually that sister was the second person outside of my immediate family,
yeah,
that I came out to, and um, she kept that to herself, and I'm sure to her husband, uh, but for a year or close to a year before I came out to mom and dad, um, and she was really very understanding, and did not wasn't judgmental at all. Didn't didn't try to argue or push back at all. So and
yeah,
I really did appreciate that too. And it was kind of odd. She actually said, well, I understand, and that she said that Turtle, you had tried Christianity, and it just didn't work for you, and that kind of attitude that it was okay was surprising and refreshing to me. Um, you know, in fact, I really didn't know what to make of it at the time.
yeah. That's interesting.
But so, and I don't know, I don't know where to go from there with the conversation, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't, at this point, I don't, I'm I will say that our mom's passing has opened up avenues in terms of relationships that had kind of uh, reached a dead end prior to her passing, and um, I'm a little afraid that it's going to be viewed as, because Christians are really good at coming up with um, reasons why something happens in post hoc. You know, like, well, this happened. I'm afraid that, and I don't. It's not. I still plan on um, keeping an open dialogue with the rest of the family and not shutting myself off again at this point. Um, but I'm a little afraid that it's going to be viewed as, well, that's the reason why mom died, is so it would open up the door uh, for me to rejoin the family, and it'll be viewed as, well, that was God's plan,
Yeah.
which I have a feeling that even if it's not said aloud, that that will be the thought in people's heads. But I don't know how to combat that without being rude. But I don't know that I will combat that either if it is presented to me. But
I doubt it would be presented to either you or I. I don't know, but oh, I don't know. I think it's just important to just be ourselves and be real and try to be as human as we can to the rest of the family. I'm at this stage just most concerned that that dad is okay, and I mean he's not okay, but that he ends up all right in the long run, and is doesn't neglect his own needs out of grief at this point.
yeah, well, it's hard. It's definitely hard to say. But I and I know he's sad and heartbroken, but I don't see him damaging himself over this in terms of his, not taking care of himself. He's not going to know, he doesn't know how to do certain things at this point, but our sisters are trying to help. And I live here, and not that I know how to do everything that our mom used to do, but um, I'm not going to be able to teach him how to cook all the stuff she used to cook, since I'm a microwave man.
I think you should
But
take up quilting.
yeah. um, but I think he's going to be okay. But I do I do think it's one of the unfortunate side effects of the religion, is it just doesn't prepare you for you know these kinds of situations properly. Because I mean, that's I think you almost fool yourself into thinking that um, these bad things can't happen to you because you got the head honcho on your team. And then when it comes time, and it happens to everybody dies, you're just not emotionally prepared for it.
Yeah.
But
Well, then I think the other thing that's kind of always in the background is, well, Jesus is going to come back before I go.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
any minute now.
any minute now, any minute now. Yeah, I remember in when we were kids. I mean, and I'm 5 years younger than you, but at in the church group or whatever, being told about the rapture, and you got to be ready, you got to be ready. It's like, and you do get in that mindset of like, okay, well, it could be any second now, but I'm sure it'll happen before I die, but
Yeah.
or before someone I care about dies.
Right.
But yeah, I do find it strange, and I mentioned this at the beginning. It seems to me that the people who have the most trouble at this point in time are, some of the people who were the most religious. But
Yeah. And grandma, maybe just because it was her daughter, but mom was 73. It's not like she was 15 or something, and she had lived a full and predominantly happy life.
Yeah, yeah, and uh, like like we've said, our grandma's probably not too far away. So I mean, if you do really believe that she's in heaven and you're going to heaven, I don't know. It seems too harsh to even say something like that, but it's
That's the reality of the worldview.
yeah, yeah. I know. I do feel like you're holding hands with these people. Like you're. Yep. Yeah, yeah. They're off in fairyland. Don't worry about it. And if you tell them that there isn't a fairyland, that that's just the worst thing you can do. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I guess for my final thought, this will be just an observation. Is the idea? I've had believers ask me, well, what do you think happens when you go, when you're done? And my response is the same thing that happens to fish and cats and dogs and all the other animals. That you know you're
Right.
done. You checked out. Your brain is gone and you're gone, and it just goes back into the earth. Um, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's sad for those that are left behind, because they'll miss you, and I do miss mom, um, and I am pretty confident I'm probably not going to see her again, but I have memories of her, and I those memories are important to me and meaningful to me. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to play pretend that there's this other place out there, um, where we're going to meet up again when there's just not any good evidence for it.
There's the odds that the best place you can possibly imagine is where you get to go after you die. I gotta say the odds of that actually being true versus the odds of it just being made up by somebody who wanted to believe that are it's not looking too good. Um, but yeah, I mean I'm the same view of I look at death as the same being the same thing as pre-life. I'm not rushing towards death, but I'm not afraid of death itself. I'm afraid of dying because that could be painful, and I like existing, so I don't want to not exist. But I have no reason to fear the actual state of death because there's nothing there. There's no pain. There's no consciousness. I I go into a state of unconsciousness every night intentionally,
Yeah,
so I'm not afraid of that. You know, I the fear of not being able to come out of that unconsciousness, sure, um, that's sad, but it's not frightening. It's to me, I was much more frightened of dying when I was a believer because, a, there's a chance you're going to hell, no matter how good you've been most of your life.
you
If
kind of
you're
gotten it wrong somehow.
Yeah, if you end it on a bad note, you could end up in hell. And the other thing is, I was never excited about going to heaven. I've always felt intimidated about the thought of going to heaven. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the way it's described, I mean, apart from the kind of overarching idea that you're not supposed to have any more sadness, um, and you're only supposed to have joy there. Well, that kind of sounds okay, but I don't know. If you were in a constant state of happiness and joy, is that even for all of eternity? What is that even like? Doesn't it become meaningless after a while?
I would think it would become meaningless probably within the first couple of years.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
very very shortly, and I would expect even before that. I mean, after a day or two of just being in a constant state like that, I would think that it would get old.
yeah. Uh, and again, it sounds very much like somebody just made that up because it sounds good.
Yeah, well,
Like,
and without thinking about it very
right,
much at all. Yeah,
right. Oh, I'm happy forever. Sign
and
me up.
and worshiping a deity forever also not very appealing. Even if
Well,
it's a really super nice deity.
yeah, I find I always like to think of things when we're talking about religion, and uh, I like to think of like God in that situation. Like, really, is that what God wants, to be worshipped by us forever? That just sounds so pathetic to me. Like, that could you be more narcissistic?
Right?
Like, you have to have all these people worship you forever? Like, can't you just be? like, like, just exist without having to have people worship you or
Just
even
interact like the
compliment
rest
you.
of us do, right? I mean, sure, you've got some extra powers and magic tricks that you could do, but just be cool about it, right?
Right. It's just, I don't know. I can't understand how people don't who believe these things don't ever take a second and like try and put themselves in God's position and think about like how weird God is if these things about him are true.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, and then the thought that occurred to me a while ago was, what if people got to heaven and and it was mostly as described, except the God that they expected wasn't readily apparent and there, but was as intangible and nebulous as he is or isn't in this world,
hmm,
and and also as hands off, so that you had other people telling you what he said. And what if part of your worship was supposedly uh, burning these other people in hell for eternity, adding fuel to them, and something. Well, he works through people, so this is how he's going to punish them, and that's how you're going to worship. You know, what would you do then? What if your idea and your conception of heaven is off, and and it's
yeah,
going to be just like it is now? With that,
only more extreme.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, that's an interesting.
How far would you take blind obedience? Because that's essentially what you're doing when you read a book that was written by a person who said that they heard from a deity.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the primary difference for most Christians today is that their requirements are almost nothing. All they have to do is say they believe, and if they feel like it, go to church.
Yeah,
But yeah, um, but anyway, I think that at least for me, kind of sums up all my thoughts on the situation we had. But
yeah. I
um,
think that about wraps it up for me too.
but it was good talking to you, Gavagai, and sad times. Um, but like I said to my sister, life is kind of a package deal. Life and death always come together, and there's nothing we can do about it but kind of move on and appreciate the things that happened in our past.
Yeah, a good note to end on.
All right, we'll
All right,
catch you later.
take care. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode or whatever this is. Have a good night.
Night.